Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to episode 3 of our ongoing series where we count down the top 100 heavy metal songs of all time, as conducted by a recent article in Rolling Stone magazine. Now, we're going to start this episode a little bit differently as we reach into our mailbag. One of our loyal viewers had a question, and he said, "The dude, how do you rank the songs that you're putting onto the list?" And I want to reiterate, this is not my top 100 list. My top 100 list would look extremely, vastly different than what the Rolling Stone has. So basically all I'm doing is when I run into a song or an artist that I need to replace, I pick one of my favorite songs that I believe Rolling Stone should have included in the top 100, but by no means is this a definitive ranking. Having said that, let's talk about this Rolling Stone list for a minute, as after 2 videos, we have actually accepted the Rolling Stones artist and song combination a total of 3 times. Meaning so far, the Rolling Stone is hitting about 15%. Not a very good ranking after the first 20 that we've reviewed. And I got a spoiler alert for you. They're only going to hit 1 tonight. But the one they do hit is a good one. They finally nailed one of these selections. Now, as we go through these, you can look ahead to the Rolling Stone list and try to figure out which one I'm going to accept. But with that, we're going to get right to it. All right, starting off the list today is at number 80, the Deftones with My Own Summer. Now, the Deftones are one of the more celebrated bands that we've had on the list thus far. They have, count them, 5 Grammy nominations. And I'm not going to pick any of the songs that have been nominated for Grammys, nor am I going to pick the song the Rolling Stones picked. I guess I'm a bit of a contrarian, but I'm going to pick a song off their 2012 album called Tempest. Now, to me, Tempest is the perfect vehicle for the Deftones' unique sound. You know, Chino Moreno has a very hard and distinct voice to describe. He is, in some ways, almost whispering at times in his song, almost as he's singing in desperation. And Stephen Carpenter's guitar work is absolutely atmospheric. It just encompasses you, and to the point of the song lyrics in the Tempest is swirling in circles. This song makes you feel like you're in the eye of a storm. It completely surrounds you. It engulfs you. It's not a departure from their other music, mind you, but the song is a perfect vehicle to just have you lose yourself in the moment. I love the Deftones. I love their sound. It is so unique and so enveloping. I think I read in one place where this is called drone metal. I don't know what you call it, but it's fantastic. And it comes in at number 80, Deftones with Tempest. Now at the first of the video, I challenged you to guess which song I would accept as the Rolling Stones selection. And coming in at number 79 is Accept, Balls to the Wall. Well, this is a bit of a trick question, because this seems like the obvious choice in these 10. But remember the rules of the Rolling Stone replacement list. I can only accept one song from Accept because they're only on the list one time. And Accept does have a better song. Now there's a technicality here, as Balls to the Wall is definitely one of the top 100 heavy metal songs of all time. But it's not Accept's best. That honor and distinction goes to, from 1982's Restless and Wild album, Fast as a Shark. Now, Ball to the Wall may be Accept's somewhat signature song, but there's no doubt in my mind that Fast as a Shark is not only their best song, but it's influential song as well. Many people cite this as the first speed metal song in history. Going back into the early 80s, you won't find a faster, more aggressive song. And it really put Accept on the map, that to then release Balls to the Wall shortly thereafter. Now again, I'm here to critique the Rolling Stones list, and there's no doubt both of these Accept songs should be on the top 100. They might even have a couple more that would be under consideration. But because we're stuck with their rules, and we can only put one on there, we're going to stick with Fast as a Shark. Now, a quick note on the song Balls to the Wall. One of the things that always annoyed me was back in the 80s, we used to take songs and shorten them for the radio or for MTV. And sometimes you can shorten a song, cut out some, maybe not dead weight, but parts of the song that aren't critical to the song. We saw this way back when in Pick 90, when we talked about Dream Theater actually shortening their song Pull Me Under to get radio airplay, and it worked. The song was fantastic. But in this case, Accept also did the same thing and shortened the song Balls to the Wall. If you've only heard the radio version or the MTV version, pull up their album, take a listen. A much better song in its full length. They kind of butchered it, if you ask me, the way they cut the song up and took some of the really cool parts and cool choruses out of the back end of it. So again, maybe take a listen to that song with a fresh set of ears. But coming in at number 79, not Balls to the Wall, Fast as a Shark, Accept. All right, coming in at number 78 on the Rolling Stone list is Concubine. Once again, this is not the song that I'm going to keep or the artist. Instead, I'm going to switch to Bring Me the Horizon and the song Shadow Moses off their 2013 Sempiternal album. Now, Bring Me the Horizon's a bit of a Goldilocks band. Allow me to explain. If you go back into their early stuff, like Suicide Season, it's a little too screamy for my tastes. If you fast forward to, let's say, That's the Spirit, the songs are a little too smooth, a little too commercial. And if you pull up their newest stuff, I don't even know what that is. It's awful. I don't consider it metal or hard rock. It's just terrible. But if you go back to the Sempiternal album, as the Baby Bear once said, it's just right. This album is what I would consider a perfect album. Start to finish, fantastic. Again, one of the things that happens a lot in heavy metal, we've talked about this, we'll probably continue to talk about this, is something happens with heavy metal bands where they start out really heavy and slowly but surely become more and more commercial in order to increase sales. Sometimes moving slightly in a commercial direction is beneficial. And this is one of those cases. Now again, Bring Me the Horizon went way too far and now is unrecognizable as a heavy metal band. But Sempiternal is really good. They have several good songs that I actually considered picking in here. Empire, Go to Hell, for heaven's sake, Sleepwalking, and of course the one I did end up picking, Shadow Moses. I love all four of these songs, and there's other songs on this album that are equally good. The reason I picked Shadow Moses above the others is, man, does it have a nice, heavy riff. Really good song, real crunchy riffs, really catchy tune. So if you've listened to some of their earlier stuff and didn't care for it, or listened to some of their later stuff and found it downright awful, I recommend going back to this album from 2013 and look up the song Shadow Moses. And I think you'll see why Bring Me the Horizon became such a big overnight sensation. If you're confused as to why they are now, this will explain a lot. 2013, Shadow Moses, Bring Me the Horizon. All right, coming in at number 77 is Soundgarden with Jesus Christ Pose. Now, if you guess this is the song I'm going to keep, you're getting closer. Soundgarden, the band I'm going to keep, but I'm definitely going to take a different song. But a song that also appears on the same 1991 Bad Motor Finger album, one of my favorite albums of all time. Now, I know the grunge movement's a little controversial, but there's a couple of bands that really stood out in the grunge movement that had great appeal to me and became two of my favorite bands of all time, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. To me, Soundgarden, kind of similar to Bring Me the Horizon, although not nearly as extreme. Starts out really raw, kind of ends up in a more commercial state, but right in the middle of that is Bad Motor Finger. Fantastic album, but the song I'm going to pick, not Jesus Christ Pose, but Slaves and Bulldozers. I would put Chris Cornell, potentially, in one of the top 5 hard rock or heavy metal singers of all time. The minute I heard his voice, I fell in love with it. It's beautiful, it's powerful, and it's unique. What more can you ask from a singer? And if you want my opinion of what Chris Cornell's greatest feat musically is, it's Slaves and Bulldozers. That song has so much power and emotion. It's hard to describe. It is a sonic assault. It is a powerhouse. Maybe one of the greatest songs I've ever heard vocally. Not just from Chris Cornell, but of any heavy metal singer. I love this song. I love Chris Cornell's voice. Rest in peace, Chris. You left us way too early. But you at least left us with some great music to remember you by. And to me, this is Chris Cornell's crowning achievement vocally. Again, from 1991 Bad Motor Finger, Soundgarden, and the great Chris Cornell, Slaves and Bulldozers. If you haven't heard this one, go look it up. You'll thank me later. All right, coming in at number 76 on the Rolling Stones list is Bathory, A Fine Day to Die. Bathory is one of those bands, well, there's a lot of bands similar to Bathory. Great sound, but I'm not into the vocals at all. So Bathory has to go, and in its place, I'm going to introduce you to maybe my favorite new band. And when I say new band, I'm talking this is a band whose career spans entirely post-2000. And that band is Avatar. We talked earlier in the mailbag. How do you rank these songs? Let me tell you something. Avatar would be much higher on the list and would have several songs on the top 100. This band has had, count them, 6 great albums in a row. That may not sound like a lot, but if you really look deep into the heavy metal catalog, it's rare to see a band nail it 6 straight times. I look back at maybe the first 6 Iron Maiden albums. Ronnie James Dio did it, but he did it across 3 bands, Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and his solo band. Even the great Metallica didn't have 6 great albums in a row. It is harder than you think to do, and Avatar has seemingly done it effortlessly. And here's the funny part. Every one of their albums sounds a little bit different. So not only is each of the albums great, but they're both, they take chances and they change up their sound. So it doesn't go stale either. So each new album, it's a whole new listening experience. I love Avatar. I am a proud member of Avatar Country. But the song I'm going to pick today is off their 2012 album, The Black Waltz. Smells Like a Freak Show. Again, I could put all sorts of songs on here. But this is the song that really got me into Avatar. Now, I'm going to warn you, when you go out and look at Avatar, if you haven't seen them before, they have kind of a crazy gimmick where the lead singer kind of wears like Alice Cooper clown makeup, and the band can sometimes come off in their videos or their presentations in a little bit of a comical way. The first time I saw Avatar, I was kind of turned off, to tell you the truth. Didn't really care for their gimmick much. But hey, their music speaks for itself. It is both hit after hit after hit, but also heavy, very heavy stuff. I love it. I want to put them on this list at least 4 times. But again, based on the rules, I can only do it once. So I'm going to go with Smells Like a Freak Show. Coming in at number 76, Avatar. All right, coming in at number 75, Skid Row, Youth Gone Wild. Now, this situation is very similar to the situation we had with Accept, in that Youth Gone Wild probably should belong in the top 100, but I don't believe it's Skid Row's best song. In fact, I don't think it's close. I think their follow-up album in 1991, the title track, Slave to the Grind, is the song we must put in here. Now, it's interesting with Skid Row. I think they were unfairly labeled as a hair band because Sebastian Bach was a very beautiful man. Long flowing blonde hair, angelic voice. I think it just put them into the pretty boy bands just because Sebastian was that good looking. But the fact of the matter is they were much heavier than the hair metal pretty boy bands that were coming out of California. This group out of New Jersey had a little more grit to them, and so just to prove it, Skid Row did something that very few bands do, and will always eternally earn my respect for. They actually got heavier. They intentionally heavied up their music just to put any doubts to rest of what kind of band they were. You don't see that very often. Ironically, the only band that really pops into my mind from that era who went heavier was Pantera. And the first time I ever saw Skid Row in concert, they were with Pantera. So maybe the boys got backstage together and hatched this scheme. But it takes a lot of guts for Skid Row, whose first album sold over 5 million copies, to say, you know what, we're not going to stick with the formula. We're not going to put something radio friendly on that's not true to who we are. And the result was a much heavier Slave to the Grind album. And respect from the dude, because too many times our bands sell out. Too many times our bands go for the commercial success, and they just lose us in the process. So congratulations, Skid Row, for taking your music and making it heavier and harder. We salute you, and we put you on the list at number 75 with Slave to the Grind. Now, coming in at 74 on the Rolling Stone list is Obituary, Chopped in Half. It seems like at least once an episode, I'm going to upset my son, who is also the producer of these videos, by the way, by taking out one of his favorite bands. Now, his favorite Obituary song is 10,000 Ways to Die. So again, we'll give that an honorable mention. But once again, sorry to my producer, but we are going to take Obituary out of the list and put in Avenged Sevenfold, because they have a song that just has to be on this list. Maybe one of the greatest heavy metal hits of all time. From 2013, the title track, Hail to the King. The opening riff on this song is so recognizable and so awesome. I really believe that Avenged Sevenfold had a series of albums, good albums, that kind of peaked with this album and the album before it, Nightmare, where they had really hit their groove. Still very heavy, but writing very catchy, radio-friendly songs. And Hail to the King, I think, is the pinnacle of their careers. It is bringing that heaviness and rawness up again to a level that the band was able to remain heavy, but put something on that was very accessible to the casual listener. So once again, coming in at number 74, not Obituary, but Avenged Sevenfold, Hail to the King. All right, at the beginning of this video, when I said there was one song on this list today that the Rolling Stone absolutely nailed, if you guessed at number 73, Ramstein with Du Hast, you are absolutely correct. Today's artist spotlight, is on Ramstein, one of the most underrated bands in heavy metal history. I take you back to the year 1997, driving around, listening to some great music, and all of a sudden, Du Hast comes on. I'm blown away. Like, it's one of those things where you know you've made a great song, a legendary song, when people, let's not do too much math here, but it was about 25 years ago, and I can still remember it like it was yesterday, the first time I heard this song. I had never heard of Ramstein, and as far as I know, they were a relatively unknown band here in the States. And yet, this song was so good that even though it wasn't sung in English, which the entire record industry, radio, music industry is based on English singing performers, for them to break through commercially with a song sang entirely in German, it lets you know just how great this song was and what a feat it was for Ramstein to make it over here. We talked about, how did Dream Theater break through? How do some bands break through? It's always a mystery, right? Ramstein. How did a German-speaking heavy metal band blow up my radio that day? But man, I've been loving their music ever since. One of my favorite bands. The only complaint I would have with the Rolling Stone is they only put Ramstein on this list once. And I think they've got some other songs that are also contenders for the top 100, in particular their song Sonne. And a more recent song also would definitely be in consideration, Deutschland. Ramstein, one of the best bands you're ever going to hear. They are the artist spotlight. This is the song that the Rolling Stones absolutely nailed, because to tell you the truth, at 73, this song should be much, much higher. I'm going to go out on a limb here. This song should be in the top 20 heavy metal songs of all time. That's how much I love this song. That's how much I endorse this song. This is really the first song that the Rolling Stone has put together that I can wholeheartedly not just endorse, but promote as one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time. But for their list, it comes in at number 73, the great Du Hast. All right, coming in at number 72, Napalm Death with the song You Suffer. Well, my producer is suffering right now because I'm throwing out another one of his favorite heavy metal bands. Now, if you have looked ahead, spoiler alert, there's several songs later on the list that Rolling Stones puts in there by the band Judas Priest. Judas Priest is, of course, fronted by one of the greatest vocalists. He's in my top 2 vocalists of all time, Rob Halford, the metal god. Well, what's better than having one heavy metal band fronted by Rob Halford on this list? Having 2 heavy metal bands fronted by Rob Halford on this list. And thus brings me to the story at 72, the band Fight and the song Nailed to the Gun. Now, When Judas Priest broke up, when Rob Halford left Judas Priest, I was devastated. They had just put out the powerful album Painkiller. They seemed to really have found their mark and were ready to just go on an absolute blitzkrieg across the metal landscape. Instead, Rob Halford left, and he joined up with his fellas from Cleveland, I believe. And all of a sudden, Rob Halford loses all the leather, all the motorcycles, and starts dressing like he's the lead singer of Suicidal Tendencies. Real streetwise muscle shirts and bandanas, and it's a completely different look. And it's a completely different sound. Fight has that traditional heavy metal bass, but it also has a little bit of what Pantera was doing and a little bit of the nu metal. And we're talking about 1993 here, so pretty early into the nu metal music. They kind of mixed all three of those and made a great album. Now, Fight, they produced 2 albums. The second album was decent, not great. You could tell the record label did not put any effort into supporting them, and they kind of died off. Rob Halford went into the band 2, and then went into his solo career before eventually, and luckily for all of us, returning to Judas Priest. But if you take a look at any of the work that Rob Halford did or that Judas Priest did in this kind of exiled period, by far, Fight, War of Words, is that epic album that came out of that breakup. Not a lot of people have heard of Fight because, again, they were only around for a couple albums. But if you haven't heard this band and this album, War of Words, go check it out. And in particular, the song today that's coming in at 72, Nailed to the Gun. Finally today, wrapping up our video, coming in at number 71 is Mastodon, Blood and Thunder. Now I'm going to get really nitpicky here because I do believe Blood and Thunder is one of Mastodon's best songs, maybe my second favorite song of theirs. But there's one song I love so much more, and that's off their 2006 album, the song Sleeping Giant. Now, we talked at the beginning of this video about how the Deftones were one of the most celebrated bands in heavy metal history. And here at the end of this video, we can talk about Mastodon, who has had 6 Grammys awards, including a Grammy winner with Sultan's Curse. Mastodon's one of the biggest bands in the more modern era of metal, and I would say kind of a thinking man's heavy metal band. They're kind of hard to describe, in that they're kind of they're not really they're kind of a blend of like the traditional heavy metal and a little bit of the progressive metal, but it comes together in a really straightforward package. Great riffs, great music, and a great catalog that has a very loyal following. So Mastodon will stay on the list at number 71, but we're going to instead go with the song Sleeping Giant to wrap things up tonight. And that does it for episode 3. Again, we have gone through 30 Rolling Stone songs, and we've kept a grand total of 4. Again, their batting average continues to slip. We'll see if they can do better next week as we go through songs 70 through 61. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. See you next Tuesday. Take care.